G'day! In today's video I'm talking about and doing a small review on my likes and the dislikes of the Motorola Edge 30 Pro. This particular one I swapped to after using a Samsung Galaxy S21, and this one came up relatively cheap for about $350 Australian second hand. They sell new on special for around about $450 and normally about $600 or so. What I found with it, my likes and my dislikes. So far, Android 13 on here has been perfectly fine, no complaints whatsoever. Battery life on this has been pretty good. General use, I usually walk around, might play a YouTube video, bit of Spotify, YouTube music in the car, using Bluetooth to connect it up to the car. I find that if I don't try and actively charge it, I can usually get about a day and a half out of it, even with not really thinking about it. If I am using it more on the weekends, I find that on the weekends I do need to charge it each night basically. I believe it's around a 5000 milliamp or 4800 milliamp battery in this, which to me this is a large phone. The S21 that I've had previously fit into my hand a hell of a lot better than what this does. This I've had a few times where I've getting in and out of the cars and it will bump into my waist. Definitely not used to that with a smaller S21. Performance wise has been perfect. I've had no issues whatsoever. Image wise, using Netflix has been pretty darn good. No complaints, especially compared to the S21. Most of it's usually restricted to the media that I'm playing, not the overall resolution of the screen. Audio has been perfectly fine. I found that during voice calls though, with my cover on it, which is a fairly plain one, fairly plain generic eBay one, slips over it. I find weirdly that the audio must be coming out of a different spot than right at the very top. So I find that I usually have to tilt the phone a little bit to hear better. Also, I do suspect I'm becoming slightly deaf, but anyway. Image quality is good, audio is fine, audio on during media playback is perfectly fine as well. I've used it for PS2 emulation, done that perfectly fine. I did try Tears of the Kingdom on there, which I've got on the Switch, and for some reason it will just crash while trying to open the game, but I think that's more of a setup issue than the hardware itself. I believe it's got a Snapdragon 8 Plus 1 in there, or 8 Plus, so a very high-end processor in there. That combined with the 8 gig of RAM, I'm assuming it should be able to handle most tasks quite well. But here's my biggest downfall of it. Apart from the physical size, which that is a personal thing, the cameras on the back I'm not overly thrilled with. We have a the standard 1x camera, a 0.5 wide angled camera, and a 2 megapixel macro camera. Those particular setups I don't have an issue with, but the dilemma that I've got is I'm more used to using the 2x focus for slightly longer shots, and I'll rather zoom in more. I'll zoom in more than what I would taking something up close. If I'm taking something up close, I'm happy to move closer to it. Granted, the macro camera does make it a bit easier, but overall I feel like it should have been a 2x camera. The other dilemma that I've got there is the camera quality that I'm getting, even in good light or cloudy overcast light, is relatively poor, especially zooming in. Zooming in, the image quality I found for me personally compared to the S21 has become relatively a step back, put it that way. I do find it gets grainy and it looks a bit over sharpened. Took identical photos with my wife, kids playing, and basically took a photo not in the same spot. Hers was nice, crisp, sharp, oversaturated Samsung. It was sharp, but it looked lacking, especially compared to the Samsung. So I do believe if I used the S21 over this, the S21 would have a better camera than the Motorola Edge 30 Pro. So going off from the camera, going back to power, charging it, the battery lasted very well, no complaints there at all, nothing really noticed. The biggest notice was the physical size and the camera, which to me was a bit of a letdown. The physical size, I knew that going into it was going to be a larger phone, but I've just found, personally, I'm not a fan of larger phones. Much rather something that's a 6-inch phone or smaller. These ones, 6.6, 6.7, are a bit too tall. So I'm probably going to look at something like a Zenfone 9 as my next phone to experiment with. With this one, if you're after something fairly simple or wanted a mid-range phone, basically, if you're going from something like a Samsung Galaxy A20, A30, something of that era, or like sub $200 price range, something like this may very well be a good step up, especially if we exclude the cameras. If we're excluding the cameras, the rest of the phone, it's been pretty much problem-free. I can't say there's really anything that's stuck in my mind about this model of phone as opposed to the S21. Yeah, size, cameras, but for around $350 that I paid for it, or $450. Granted, you might be able to get something like a Pixel 6 on special for around the $400 mark, which is pretty close to one of these, which then it will come down to, would you rather a really good camera, or would you rather have a phone that ticks all the boxes mostly everywhere else? So I'm going to leave that for you guys to decide. For me, I'm actually going to go back, I'm going to sell this again, and I'm going to go back to my S21 for now, as I find the S21, excluding its battery life, which is getting rather poor, even with a replacement battery, I'm still extremely happy with the camera and also the pocketability of that phone. So back to the S21 I go. This is Seed of the Moto Edge 30 Pro, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.